Hello.
Good afternoon. How are
Good
you, Kristen?
afternoon. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for being here with us. I
Absolutely.
just gave everybody a little history education of this office and, what happened to it over the last 20 years, all the,
Hmm.
positions being taken away, and that the point or the roles being taken away, but that the point of that was to eliminate oversight, right? They wanted all of the control to be under the Department of Administration. And even the Republican who was in that position said the chief executive officer should not also be the chief financial officer. And that was a Republican who was in that position for a long time. So I'm going to ask you some questions. I will introduce you briefly with what it says um, on your website, and then we're gonna launch straight into the questions. We're a little 2 minutes behind, so we're gonna go 20 minutes, right?
Okay.
Ready? Okay, here we go.
Yes.
First of all, is it Helmenstein or
You got
Helmenstein?
it. Yes.
Okay. Dylan Helmenstein is a
Yes.
public servant. Having served on numerous boards and committees and as an elected official, he has a master's degree in public affairs. All right, Dylan, question number one. I just explained what the office does not do. But one of the things it does do is maintain public lands. So, how would you use the office to maintain and improve public lands for use by people with disabilities, as well as those unencumbered by physical limitations entrusted to the state?
Sure. And so thank you again for having me on, Kristen. And I know Gabby was communicating with us, so I appreciate everybody listening in about this race. I say we have a very exciting primary for the governor's race and also for the treasurer's primary. When it comes to the lands, the public trust lands are still underneath the oversight of something called the Board of Commissioners of Public Lands, which you may have gotten into, Kristen. It's an agency that is over that is led by the Attorney General, Secretary of State, and State Treasurer's Office.
Okay.
And those lands were given to the state of Wisconsin by the federal government in a land grant act. And that is how, as we have sold those lands off, we funded the Common School Trust Fund of $1.6 billion. There are some remaining trust lands in Wisconsin, and you're talking about making sure it's accessible by folks of all abilities. And I've been working with somebody in town. She has been a little wheelchair bound for a long time, and there is an organization she's been working with to get all-wheel drive wheelchairs out there so people can go throughout our public access lands. It
Oh,
is a nonprofit organization. Off the top of my head, I can't remember, but I can work to get the information to you, Kristen. And I think having a partnership between the state treasurer's office and nonprofits that are focused on accessibility for our public lands is really key because these are the public's lands. These are all of us. We own them together, and making sure we steward them so they remain quality areas for everybody to enjoy, but also the lands in the public trust that are used for timber management so that they can fund the normal school trust fund. That's also an important part of the stewardship for the state treasurer's office.
very good. How, so the unclaimed property is now managed elsewhere, but your
Mhm.
office is responsible for promoting it, correct?
In so many words, that's what the incumbent
Okay,
Republican
so
likes to
how
claim.
would
Yeah.
you do a good job of promoting this thing we have that says
Mhm.
you might have some unclaimed property that you
Right.
can go get that the state's been holding for you?
Right. And so the unclaimed property program is an example of using public power for the public good. We've set up a system where when you are owed money by a company and they can't find you somehow, that the state will help manage those funds until you're able to claim them. And it was something that was underneath the Treasury for a while, but has since been moved to the Department of Revenue for management and administration. But I think it's time to bring back what state treasurers had done for the entirety of that time when they were in charge of it, which is you're showing up at the state fair, you're showing up at county fairs with a booth for the treasurer's office,
Oh,
and you're
yeah.
not only making connections with people about the importance of good financial management of state resources, but also talking about the unclaimed property program so people can put their information in there. And folks don't know about the unclaimed property program in the same way they don't know about a lot of things for state government in Wisconsin, because I think a lot of our systems have been purposefully made to be confusing and hard to engage with as a Wisconsinite. And that's why we need a state treasurer's office and a state treasurer focused on making government more understandable and easier to work through so that we are in control of our communities again.
So the Common School Fund, you
Mhm.
mentioned it briefly.
Yeah.
What is it?
It's incredible because it was founded in our state's constitution. The Common School Trust Fund is $1.6 billion now, and it's a trust fund of money set aside to serve our public schools and our local communities. Uh, the way that it serves our local communities is the money in that trust fund can be used as a loan at a low cost fixed rate for our
Oh,
communities to make a big capital purchase with. So I know communities that have used it to buy a fire truck, rebuild Village Hall, or there are many school districts that get a loan from this state trust fund loan program to redo the entrances of their high schools and elementary schools so they're more secure. And that's awesome because it's a fixed rate loan, and in rural communities that can't access credit markets at the same way a larger city can, it allows those communities to get the projects done that they need at an affordable rate without pushing as much to the property tax. But the incredible part about the Common School Trust Fund is that when the money comes back from those loans on the interest payments, or even the investments that are made with that money, when it comes back, it doesn't go to some bank out of state or to profit for some corporation. The money gets invested into our public schools through library aid. And so it's a really incredible way that we have created a whole system of financial support for our local communities and investments, but also then a way that the money goes and supports our public schools in Wisconsin for the libraries. And again, that's why this is an office where in the past we've used public power for the public good to create this reinvestment in our communities. And we need to protect that Common School Trust Fund. Like you had said, they've reduced the treasurer's office. They tried to get rid of it in the past in an attempt to get their hands on this money, that $1.6 billion dollars. And by them, I mean Republicans who wanted to control how that money was used and spent. But I think it's important, if it's in our Constitution, the Common School Trust Fund, as a resource for our communities and our students, we have to protect that original intent. And that's what I'll do as state treasurer.
so th- we've talked about the things it doesn't do, this office, but how is your vision? What is your vision for how this office can help Wisconsinites thrive?
Mhm.
What creative programs could you make that make sense for this office?
So I see this office as a way that we need to be pushing at all fronts, not only here in the Democratic Party in the primary I'm running in, but as Wisconsin as a whole, of working to get government back to the people and using public power for the public good again. And for the state treasurer's office, the first way we do that is defending public education by ensuring that Common School Trust Fund remains independent and growing effectively. As a member of the Teachers Retirement Board of Wisconsin, which helps to oversee the public pension, I have the experience to do that. But
And I
also,
should say, you're on that board of your own volition. That has nothing to do with this position. You were
that's
elected to that
correct.
board,
I was appointed by the
appointed.
governor as a
Okay.
school board rep to the Teachers Retirement Board.
Okay,
Yes.
good.
And so then I think this office also needs to help bring government transparency into the 21st century in Wisconsin at all levels of government. And I think that we need an office working to make the publicly available information that's out there publicly understandable so that voters can understand what's going on in their own communities and in their states. So that looks like two key projects. One is to create a visual public dashboard of the state budget so that
Okay.
people can go to the treasurer's office website and see how the state's funds are impacting their community. And I was a former Medicaid financial analyst and auditor for Wisconsin Medicaid programs, a $1 billion program. I built dashboards to show that for the program of how money was flowing. And Medicaid, a famously difficult to understand program, but I saw how impactful that was for the leaders of the Department of Health Service. And I think we need that type of impact and clarity for Wisconsin voters. And the second way that we can bring transparency to people is to focus on bringing basic transparency to property tax bills, specifically for school taxes. So in Wisconsin, we have a private voucher program system where money is being funneled away from the public schools and sent to the private voucher system. But on your property taxes, that's not detailed, even though it's happening.
Mm,
And in Green Bay, and soon here in Eau Claire and maybe Kenosha, they are getting local leadership together to put a note on property taxes that details how much of the tax levy from the school district is actually going to that private system instead of being controlled by the school board. And that's just basic transparency that we need for every Wisconsin voter, so they're aware of what's going on. And until the legislature passes a law with the governor to sign it, I think the state treasurer's office needs to work and support local leaders to get this across the finish line in as many communities as possible, because you deserve to know where your money is going. And that property
interesting.
tax bill is where you expect to see that information.
All right, this went really fast. Last question, kind of a fun one. What is your favorite spot in Waukesha County?
Oh, Waukesha County. So I have been lucky. My friend, also named Dylan, his parents have a spot on Okauchee Lake, and so,
Ah,
yeah, a couple Fourth of Julys ago, we were invited to go enjoy the wakeboarding or the kneeboarding because I can't stand up yet when I'm doing it. But, and then it was also the fireworks on the lake, and that was really incredible to see everybody on their boats. So that was a really good time, and hopefully they'll invite us back at some point. But Okauchee Lake, that's a good spot.
all right, good answer. Was a candidate who wanted to abolish the state treasurer's office. That's Matt Adamsick. He actually ran
Yeah.
the platform. You know the story. Okay. What are your plans to change or strengthen the duties of the treasurer's office?
So I think what we need to do is look to our neighboring states like Iowa and Minnesota. Iowa has a state auditor position that's elected by the people that oversees state operations to ensure that they are sticking to statute and avoiding corruption in every way possible. And that's a directly elected position. If we look to Minnesota, their state treasurer is also elected by the people, and they perform oversight for local levels of government. And that means making sure our towns, villages, cities, and counties are sticking to the proper financial operations and also sticking to state statute. And in Wisconsin, we actually lack that type of oversight and that type of outside body making sure that is elected to the people, an outside body that's making sure these operations are sticking to statute and are fiscally sound. And I think we need that in Wisconsin, especially in this age where we're seeing federally, statewide, and sometimes even locally just corruption, right? And I think in Wisconsin, we need an elected position that is speaking to transparency and accountability and anti-corruption generally. And I believe that the state treasurer's office can become that role in Wisconsin, but there's a lot of work we have to do to prove that to not only the legislature, but to the people of Wisconsin. And 62% of folks voted to keep the state treasurer's office because I think they agree with the vision of that independent elected office that's focused on transparency and accountability. But we do need a leader in that position then that can demonstrate what it looks like right now with the current office of bringing more accountability and understandability to our state systems now with the work I talked about, building the visual dashboard or bringing property tax transparency to tax bills. And I think as we build that capacity and that demonstration, folks will see this is something that we really do need in Wisconsin.
Okay. Municipalities have decided to carve out and report the amount of tax dollars going to voucher schools on a property invoice. We talked about this a bit, but it is the
Yes.
question.
Mhm.
Would you support this being done on the state level?
Absolutely. And I think there are several of our gubernatorial candidates and legislators that have proposed doing it explicitly on a statewide level to make sure it's clear. And it is the type of accountability I think people expect if your property taxes are going to fund it and everything else is delineated on your property tax bill. Well, this should be too. And folks are surprised to learn that this is the current setup where your property taxes are essentially funding these private voucher system payments, but you're not able to see that. In the meantime, until we can get that in the state level, I do think the state treasurer's office needs to be engaged right now. And that's what I'm doing in this campaign with local government leaders across Wisconsin, detailing that this is something you can work on right now. You can start building the relationships between your school board and your village board and your other parts in your community, say it's a town board or city council, to start getting this done locally. And as a local elected leader, I'm at the school district now that I serve on
Oh,
the school board for. Yes,
there a
I'm
meeting
on.
tonight?
That's right. So I'm
Yeah,
hopping
okay.
back in there.
Good.
And I'm on the village board too for my hometown that I grew up in. There's a lot of silos that can happen between even local government because you get local leaders that are almost volunteering their time in a lot of ways. To bring the state treasurer's office in on this, to give legitimacy and credibility to this effort on the local level, to move it forward while the legislature and Republicans drag their feet, I think is a really good way we can enhance transparency right now in Wisconsin.
Is there anything actually stopping you or ye from putting up like this dashboard? You both talked about that.
No, and that's why I talk about the parts of my campaign and platform I talk about are all things we can do with the state treasurer's office right now, because I don't want there to be anything out there where I'm saying, well, I'll do this if we can get the legislature to pass a law or to give funding, right? If you look at the current state treasurer's website, it's a letdown for an office that, our incumbent Republican talks about fiscal accountability, but even on the website, we were talking about the Common School Trust Fund earlier. There's different web pages and there's different numbers that the current treasurer claims to be the size of that Common School Trust Fund. It's $1.6 billion. If you look at the minutes of the Board of Commissioners of Public Lands, one of his pages says 1.3, one of them says 1.4. And if you're a person out there saying I'm about fiscal accountability, your own website should be up to date. And we can do a lot more with that website. And when I'm state treasurer, you will see us doing a lot more with that website.
So we've done a lot of education about this position, even just tonight. I learned a lot just doing a little digging before we hopped on. How will you educate the public about the importance of this race? We don't want it to be just a down ballot, election, about the importance of this race and the importance of the state treasurer position.
So that's a great question, Chris. And I think that it's important to campaign in the same way you'll govern. And so one of the ways that we're trying to make sure folks understand the importance of this race, but really of getting a clean sweep in November to make sure we have every lever of power and office at our disposal to set Wisconsin back on track, is to be reaching into every audience. And so we have an always on approach for this campaign, and we're always out there trying to explain what's going on in these different laws and systems that people are confused by, explaining it. I did a video the other day explaining how to vote in the primary ballot correctly because it's confusing for a lot of folks, right?
I did that too. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it's really important. I'm glad that you did too. And so campaigning always on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook, trying to reach younger audiences, I think is really key. I was up in Stevens Point for the No Kings rally in March, and there was a group on the corner from Stevens Point, the University of Stevens Point, and I said, hello to them all when they had a moment of quiet, and they said, I've seen you on TikTok. I'm excited to vote for state treasurer. And I think that's really important to bring young people in on the process and every generation, because we all need to be a part of this. And then as state treasurer, we've got to bring the energy of Sarah Godlewski back to the state treasurer's office. You saw her using the statewide platform and statewide influence to use task force to elevate people's solutions that they're finding on the local level. And I talk about broken systems at the state level. And if we can bring transparency to them and understandability to them, we can see where they're broken. But then we're going to need the state treasurer to go out in Wisconsin and not only talk about how they're broken, but with local leadership and organizers to find the solutions to overcome that brokenness and inform what we're going to do moving forward. And so that's a state treasurer that's less at the Capitol, more about traveling the state of Wisconsin constantly and getting into communities. And that's what I plan to do as state treasurer.
All right. Thank you very much for coming back. You can go back to your meeting.
All right,
I'm
Kristen.
so sorry.
No worries at all.
All of your answers will be up on the web and we will share them all. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye.